Yikes. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the live, if you couldn't tell it already, the live video podcast for people who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. It is also home to the best chat on the internet. Of course, folks, we are here today to discuss a hero. This film is an Iranian production, an Iranian-France co-production. Won the Grand Prix, the Grand Prize at the 2021 Cannes Film Festival. Here's the log line from IMDb. Rahim is in prison because of a debt he has been unable to repay. During a 2-day leave, he tries to convince his creditor to withdraw his complaint against the payment of part of the sum. But things, of course, don't go as planned. The film itself was written and directed by Asghar Farhadi. It stars Amir, Jadidi, Mohsen, Tanabandeh, Sahar, Goldoost, Fereshteh, Sadr, Orafaie, and Sarina Farhadi. Interesting note, she is actually the daughter of the director. The film was shot in 2020, as a matter of fact. And although it's considered an Amazon Studios original, basically they bought the U.S. distribution rights, or the North American distribution rights. So Jim and I were able to watch it here in Canada. Let's talk about the social nutrition checklist. So, anyway, this film, would it qualify for a reframe stamp? No, it would not. Was it union made? I suspect it was, but I don't read Farsi, and I couldn't find any online sources that would confirm that it is a union-made production. So we basically have to give that one an X. Now, does it pass the Bechdel test? As a matter of fact, it does. And I would say, solidly does. But others may differ. Now, is it a class-conscious film? I think it is. But it's almost like a weird sort of Rorschach test. I actually, one of the reasons I brought this up with Jim as a possible was, yes, it was at one time an Oscar favorite. It was not nominated, but a lot of people thought it would be nominated. It was the Grand Prize winner at Cannes, after all. But it was interesting, the podcast that recommended it, their take on it's almost like a weird sort of class Rorschach test. I think if you're working class, you're going to interpret this character one way, and if you aren't, you're going to interpret the character another way, and therefore the whole story and some of its meaning. Anyway, but I am saying it is a class-conscious film, which means that it, I would say it's got a decent score of 50%. Now, with that out of the way, I think it's time to introduce my co-host, the man with the most, Mr. Jim. Mr. Jim, where are we? Mr. Jim Chboyko. There's the guy I was looking for. Woohoo! How are you doing, my friend? I couldn't think of a more appropriate way. I was wearing my Grey Cup jacket from when we hosted in 2016. Yeah. I was. Oh, geez, Jim, I've had you muted.
Oh no!
Again, my bad. I'm a big schmuck. You were saying about how apt something was.
So to reiterate, nothing says Super Bowl Sunday more than a serious, sober look at Iranian society. But anyway, there we go, something like that. And I am wearing my Winnipeg Blue Bomber, old timey 1950s bomber colors. So just in the spirit of the Iranian/American football moment there.
Awesome. All right. Now that I've actually got you off of mute, I do have one thing I wanted to bring up, Jim. Remember last week, you kind of gave us a breakdown on at least what the corporations were saying about the movie we were going to watch last week, which was Moonfall.
Yeah.
It was only a couple days later that it dawned on me. I mean, you saw me rolling my eyes last week with their, it's the government's fault and we need to plan so far ahead and online's hard and all this other stuff. How Jim, then did, and I'm asking this rhetorically, I'm not putting this on you,
Sure.
but I got to admit, I'm like, it dawns on me, it's like, I wonder how Jackass Forever opened. How did they do it? How did they get over these hurdles, these insurmountable hurdles? And I think it's, we got a half decent Jackass movie. We'll do fine. We're opening.
Yeah.
The other chumps, I do. I mean, I'm not saying that they're lying. Not even, they're not even prevaricating. But I got to admit, based on what we now know, and the fact that another big movie did manage to open, I would argue that the evidence we have now supports the argument that they may have. They've been, hey, are we, aren't we, are we, aren't we? But mostly it was, oh, this thing sucks and we're going to get demolished by Jackass Forever. Why spend all that money
on the Canadian market?
Well, why spend the money? Just why bother?
Yeah.
We'll save our money, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Canadian, because it was a Canadian decision, it wasn't an American decision.
Yeah.
It was all Canadian money at risk. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, we got a force majeure with them. We can put it on the government. And all the players are like, well, we could sue each other, but let's just.
I say blame the Ottawa police.
Well,
it's all. Anyway, but it's funny, and a codicil to that story, and I didn't fit it in last week, was that Canada, all up until the Moonfall malarkey, I'll take that from President Biden, leading up to the Moonfall stuff, we had only had one major release in all of January, which was the Scream movie, and that was probably until Jackass. So even though January is a slow month,
what about 355? That was a wide release.
It was, because they said a couple of times I read that Scream, and I don't know how they define major release. Like I was thinking 355 as well, but
anything
even
over
for
1,500
January,
screens, or
is that what
over
it is?
1,000 screens. Anything over 1,000 screens is considered a wide release.
Okay, so a couple of the reports said that Scream was the only one up to that point that had been released in Canada.
Because everyone had forgotten about 355. Because
yes, boy, what a golden month in cinema history, January 2022. However, with the Super Bowl,
noteworthy even for January releases.
Yeah. My son said, with the Super Bowl promo releases and all the releases today, my son said, yeah, I'm just going to be watching Doctor Strange unpacking videos for the rest of the evening. Good night. And so there's that going on. We got to look at Nope. We got to look at some other things. So, cinema's still where it's all coming out summer, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha. Well, listen, Jim, thanks for bringing that up. That was an interesting note, and I wanted to, I was like, if that's true, how did Jackass Forever come out? So thanks for humoring me there, and
Yeah,
adding
I
to the
sort of
conversation.
threw it on the Target Canada, sort of put it in that folder. Like something weird went on with the Canadian arm of things. Who knows what the real story
Yeah.
is? So,
All right, let's move on. But before we
sure.
get into the film and everything, I do want to note that we've got a couple. It looks like we've got a couple of folks in the chat. Heroes, just joining the audience now. Heroes, Jim.
They are.
Richard L. and I'm sure Katie Fowler in the chat house. And then we got a couple of new folks.
Great name.
Kapitolina Agapova.
That's a real name.
Yeah, totally. And Mandel Jazeo. You know what? It looks maybe Portuguese.
Is that the guy who owns Deer
Or
and
it
Almond?
could be Filipino. Well, Mandel is, but
I'm just kidding.
you know, not. I don't believe this Mandel.
Yes, no.
Anyway, so
You're
we
right.
got a couple of bots in the house. Always nice to see them. And
Hello,
two
Brazil.
right after the other. Given our recent success, I feel like we're on the cusp of making it, Jim. We're on the
Yes.
cusp of becoming slightly larger in our tier.
The AI bots are paying attention to us. Why aren't you?
Now we're really just waiting for our first real trolls. We did have one for Shang-Chi. I think we've had a couple of trolls, but they barely pay us any attention. They're basically, oh, this isn't even worth it. There's bigger people I control. We'll get there though.
Go after Curtis Judd.
And I like Richard here saying he was at least hoping for an Iranian bot.
Yeah.
You never know though. Well, maybe Kapitolina Agapova, like they are, you think the northern border of Iran, and Russian, well, you only call it colonization in, internal colonization, during the USSR era. And, you know, it's really, I mean, what's half of what Putin is doing is just trying to maintain or supporting those colonists that they sent into Eastern Ukraine back in the day.
Yeah.
Anyway, not really why people come to watch Jim and Rob overanalyze movies. That's just an extra bonus for you folks. All right. And we do, Jim, have a number of new subscribers. I did want to highlight a couple. You know what? Because when somebody subscribes, if they subscribe with their settings, you know, so that I know that person subscribed, I will shout them out. And so I've got 3 I want to shout out. JJ. I don't believe it's JJ as in JJ Dynamite, but
I was just gonna say that. You read my get out of my brain.
All we need now is somebody, you know, Sanford and All right. Someone else who's joined us. Anyway, welcome JJ to the Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies subscriber list. We do appreciate your subscription. Also, now I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Naotam Babu Singh also joined us. And then last but certainly not least, Movie Reviews by JT has joined us. So to all 3 of you, welcome to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies. And I think that's a perfect time to ask everyone for a quick like as we get into it. And speaking of which, it is time to get into it. Let's into the quick review. Jim, do you want to start us off?
Sure. This one is very interesting movie. I haven't watched a lot of Iranian cinema. I watched that Iranian vampire one on Canopy, and I'll figure out what the title is later. It's a big long sentence, but that was shot in LA, I think. So
Yeah, and is it even
it's like an American movie.
Like,
But
and she is also, I think the director, she is Iranian American.
yes, yeah, I think you're
So
right.
there's quite it's a cultural mashup one, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Was it Alone at
So
Night?
yes, a girl walks down the street alone at night,
Yeah.
or something to that
Yeah.
effect. But I haven't watched a lot of Iranian cinema. This one, I suspect, and I haven't seen any of this filmmaker's work, even though he's been highly touted. He's won 2 Academy Awards for foreign language movie. So I need to catch up on Farhadi, was it? But I thought it was quite interesting. Just as a quick aside, I finally watched Bloody Sunday, which is Paul Greengrass's story about the Irish, the shooting of Irish protesters back in 50 years ago. They just had the 50th anniversary.
Kind of
that
the
was
kickoff to the Troubles, or the accelerator.
Yes.
It was the butane or the naphtha sprayed on what was just embers at the time.
Yeah. And it was the 50th anniversary, and I've always wanted to see it, and I like Greengrass, and so I thought, oh, I'll find it, and it's on YouTube, and I watched it, and that he does a documentary style, and so this is the second movie this week that I felt was sort of done in a documentary style. I sort of like this one more because it was a little bit clearer. Bloody Sunday is very mumbly, so and we were talking about YouTube subtitles the other day, and they're not very good, especially with accents. But so this one I felt was an interesting, dispassionate, and by that I mean, he didn't really take any sides. He just sort of put the story out there. So documentary style. There wasn't a lot of music. There wasn't a lot of. They didn't tell us. The filmmaker, with all those cues, didn't tell us how to take in these characters or how to take in the story. He sort of left it up to us. So it's a bit of a slow burn. I felt that it gathered rhythm as it went along, and it also sort of reminded me of the more sort of nasty parts of It's a Wonderful Life. The very first time I watched that, I thought, ooh, I was wrapping Christmas presents and getting angry because there appeared to be no release, and just like everything was going against our main character here, and you want there to be some sort of, throw him a bone, filmmaker, and whether or not that happens, we'll get to that in the spoiler zone. So in a way, it was a bit torturous to watch because everything, like I was thinking, why isn't this guy just throwing himself in front of a bus? But I thought it was very intricate and very subtle. I didn't quite get the best foreign movie of the past year vibes like some of the critics did, but I thought it was interesting, and I certainly thought it was different. So how about you?
Myself, Jim, I would say, it's I slow burn. At times I was like, okay, we're gonna get going here. And some of it is the main character. Geez, I'm totally drawing a blank on the character's
Rahim.
Rahim. Thank you. The main character is a bit of a sad sack, and at times you're like, "Oh, buddy, come on," like you're so whiny. That said, as I got into it, you kind of get more and more context. I became more engaged. I agree with you about it stylistically. Its tone is real naturalistic. Lot of exegetic sound. So the only thing is, I'm like I almost want to read what Iranians are saying about it, and Iranian critics, people who know what the vibe is now in Iran, and especially urban Iran. I did love at the beginning the Xerxes reference. It was like,
oh my gosh,
awesome. But yeah, I enjoy is maybe not the right word with a movie like this. I will argue later that he This is very similar to Nomadland in a number of respects. But and I think where they differ is the director's philosophical take on the players and their context. But that I'll argue later. But in a lot of ways, they're shot very similarly. They're it's just their characters have totally different arcs. Arcs, so to speak. So I agree with you, although I haven't seen enough of the foreign film offerings to really say, but am I going, at the end of it, did I go, oh dear God, no? Did I go, oh, that was interesting? And if I was Iranian, I might even be saying, wow, that was even more interesting. Absolutely. So that was kind of my take on that, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned in terms of location, if you said, we got to find a place where the brother-in-law works. I don't know, restaurant, office. Oh, how about Persepolis, the ancient tomb of King Xerxes? Yeah, sure, he'll just drop by, climb up 13 floors up a scaffolding. I'm like, holy!
And then make a joke about it.
Oh my gosh!
And make a crack about it, like very worker-esque.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, Mr. Chaboyko, is it time to move into the spoiler zone?
Yeah, certainly.
All right, we're sure now.
Let's see. I'm just going to go to
the
YouTube.
spoiler zone.
Oh, Jelly. We got Jelly Duck.
Really?
In the house.
Awesome. Ahmed.
Woohoo.
Never mind.
But I sort of
Jelly Duck.
If anybody in the chat has watched, well, if they did watch this, or if they've watched other Iranian movies and what they thought maybe. But
I totally missed that effect. 1 sec. Ahmed deserves Jelly Duck.
There we go.
You know what? All our regulars are going to get that from now on. That just sounds awesome.
Sure.
Richard L. Katie Fowler.
It does sound.
Not the bots. All right. So let's keep moving then. We are in the spoiler zone now. Let's kick it off with Craft. And if you're cool with me starting it off here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I really did. I appreciated from at the beginning and at the end, letting us just watch people. Giving us time to get comfortable in a space that, especially as foreign audiences, we're not necessarily familiar with, to just kind of capture to get comfortable in the pace that that the director is gonna lay this whole film out. So I appreciate that. I appreciated that naturalistic feel. Again, I don't know if it felt like I was experiencing Iran. Well, first of course not. It's a film. But is it even close to reality? Who knows, eh? Well, Iranians would know. And I think that would be more the only thing holding me back from totally falling in. Plus, the editing, the shots decisions, the pacing is and it's so documentary-esque. It's not like you're just riveted from the very first scene. It takes you a while to kind of find out what even not just what the conflict is, right? So, but the acting was, I bought all these characters. I bought the little boy playing his son. Just a moody child of divorce. It's like some of that stuff. Hey, I've said that. I was a moody child of divorce.
With a stutter.
Yes, with a stutter.
in a society that maybe comes to, well, I shouldn't say,
Yeah, we don't know.
but
Well,
yeah, exactly.
Although I suspect I suspect that's not even in a society. In society,
In society,
children with
period.
different things are made fun of. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why does Biden look super duper sweet when he's dealing with any kid who's got a stutter?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because we know how cruel we are. Yeah, I thought all the performances were great. Now, some of it also is, as we've said before, watching other countries' talent. And he's got the reputation. He was recruiting top talent, but we're not used to them. We're not used to their tricks, as you say, their mannerisms. So it's even, boy, it really fits. Like none of the performances are oversized, too big, or anything.
No.
So it fit the style. Like the performances were well calibrated to the style of shooting and the aesthetic of the film. Yeah, I was impressed with it. Like it, you know what? I think the sign of a good performance to me, Jim, is, am I like, boy, I'd like to see more of that actor. What else have they done? Tick, 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 tick. So yeah, that's kind of my vibe, my jam on that, man. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that, wanting to see what other performers do. I mean, I'm old enough that I used to go down to the, and I think we've mentioned it before on this show, the reference section in the library, which had all the film encyclopedias, and you'd have to go through it to see, and then check out the late night movies on CKND and the TV Guide to see if they came up at all. But no, I agree. It's always joy. That's one of the pleasures of watching foreign movies, is that you don't know, even if somebody's playing a kind of a regular role for them, you're not aware of that, right? But I think that sort of takes away any like, if you, again, using Jack Nicholson, if they're going to put Jack Nicholson in it, you know what they're going to use him for generally. I mean, he could waver a bit, but typically he's a little bit devilish, a little bit counterculture. But with this one, you're sort of not, you're just taking them on their own terms, so there's none of that prejudice, and that's kind of interesting. And I sort of really appreciated the second half of the movie when they brought in brought back the people from the prison, brought in the people from the charity, and it suddenly, you got that claustrophobic sense that, oh, this thing's getting too big. I'm losing control of this thing. And they all had
it's all closing in.
Yeah. And there's like, the more people you add to it, it's just like, it's another prism through which to look at the story. And with their various, and they're all kind of figures of authority, the board of this charity. And you're just like,
so why don't we move into story then?
Sure. I just wanted to mention too, that the look of it was, especially earlier on, it's Iran. You get that sort of, with the lighting, you get that the whole color palette, that you get that sort of sandy yellow light that I think was established with the Persepolis, with the Temple of Xerxes at the start, and that sort of radiated throughout. Like, I love the street scenes. I like the little bit of, I don't know if this is so much craft, but I like the details. Like, I want there to be an Iranian movie about food, because the stuff that the sister was doing with she was burning stuff in a little metal pot, like in preparation for dinner. And I'm like, what is that? I want to know more. But, that's another thing about watching foreign movies, is those, the new locations and the ways of eating, and, just all the little weird malls with the money changers and the crafts people and stuff, with the windows, sort of the glass walls and stuff. That I found that really interesting too. So that's not so much craft, but it's just another aspect of the movie that I did like. But I like the look of it as well. I thought it was neatly lit.
Yeah, and again, like rarely calling attention to the director. It's not mannered, or certainly no Wes Anderson thing. Yeah.
Well, wasn't the final shot just the look out the door to the departing buses from the prison?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Listen, we got somebody else new in the house.
Hello.
Hello. Dragon Movie Guy!
Oh, hey! He's a
I
little
am not
chilly.
getting enough use out of that effect. Jim, do you want
Hey, Brian.
to add anything on craft before we move into story?
No, I think we're moving along at a clip here. Yeah, no story. Story is good.
All right.
I'm
Well,
just looking at my notes.
take it away. Take it away, my friend.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a note here, but I'll leave that for meaning. But yeah, I sort of have to admit that I was a little flat, and this is on me. I was caught a little flat-footed, not knowing a lot about Iranian society and some of the protocols and stuff. I mean, we're dealing with debtors' prisons.
Yeah, I was going to say I was unaware.
Yes, and
Ahmed,
prisons.
feel free to chime in the chat. I know Kuwait is not Iran, but feel free to chime in the chat on the general approach around the Persian Gulf to debt and say you've stiffed someone.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
but anyway, sorry, Jim. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a few things going on here. Is that there's that aspect of it, and I was gonna, and I didn't ultimately get to it, but I was gonna Google Dickensian and a hero, and just to see what came up, because to me, it's a very Dickensian. I'm sure I'm not the first person to point that out, but it was a dismantling of the society kind of story. Just taking a look at it.
What about Dostoevsky? There's no murder.
Yeah.
But this is
how things work, how the world works, with a little bit of added content of with social
crime
media,
and punishment.
Right? Yeah,
that was the Dostoevsky book.
Yes, yeah,
to. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
I had a great theory about that in school because they were painting the apartment, and I figured that the cop followed the guy walked through the paint and followed the footsteps. Anyway, and the English teacher shot me down in seconds. But anyway, so Dickensian, Dostoevskian, Fyodorian, but at the same time, I don't know Iranian society, and always movies are a commentary on the society that they're in, and so I sort of wonder how you got away with filming this in Iran. And it seems very critical about the current. I mean, it's current day, right? So it seems very critical about current day Iran and Iranians. Like it didn't paint them. There were some nasty folks involved, or petty folks, I guess.
Yeah.
It sort of reminded me of the stories you used to hear about during the Cultural Revolution. You'd have the Chinese grandmothers that lived in the apartment building. They kept an eye on like all the people who lived in the apartment building. And sort of reported back to the authorities if anything fishy was going on. It sort of reminded me of that. So it's not really a glorious reflection of current Iranian society.
But I don't think Iran is restricted in that way.
I assumed it might have been, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's restricted in that way. I don't think Iran is like Iran is not North Korea. Where it's everything is fine, and we're all good because of. He's not.
You can have one of these 10 haircuts.
Like I don't think we once saw a cleric.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it was very not religious.
So yeah, there's no and there's no actual criticism of the government. It's not. Why is the state allowing this to happen? It's not. So I suspect because he's steering clear of certain third rails, let's say, that's how he's able to do this. And it could also be just, he's not interested in that, and also even the, Iran, the Islam, the Muslim world doesn't have a thing about divorce. So even the ex-wife, that kind of thing, wasn't a. I don't think that's something a cleric, the Revolutionary Council be
Yeah.
whatever the Muslim version of pearl clutching is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that said, actually, you know what?
That's a
And
good point.
again, I don't want to pick on Ahmed too much because, he's in Kuwait City, not Tehran. But if we're saying something that sounds crazy to you, Ahmed, we do want to hear about it in the chat, just in case we're way off base here. But yeah, the impression I get of think of any of the cinema that's come out of there. We never talk about great North Korean films, but there's an interesting cinema there. So I think their restrictions are, a lot to do with, are you spying for Americans? Are you, because any of the societal criticism in here, a lot of it is pop culture driven almost, but we'll get into the meaning in a second. Did you find any holes in the story, Jim? Like, was there anything where you're like, wait, what?
I mean, it's a pretty thick story, and so, I mean, nothing to break it off for me. Nothing that I was sort of, shaking my head or anything like that. It was interesting that they didn't pursue certain things. Like, I'm trying to think back. I don't think they ultimately found out who sent the texts to the the charity there. What happened?
The guy he owed money to, by him.
Well, he denied it, but that's what I think.
I think he's
Bahram.
Bahram. Thank you. Yeah, I think he was the Fink. The Fink.
Yeah,
I'm
it probably would have been and the woman disappeared, and they, I think in the hands of another filmmaker, they would have pursued that maybe.
Yeah.
And there was another one too. Oh, they didn't do a lot of. I don't think the ex-wife was in it, but they referred to her a bunch of times. So there was a backstory. That's one of the words that I have trouble with. Backstory, or you mean story? But the history of him and his wife. You got dribs and drabs, but they didn't really sort of follow up on that.
I think that fits though the cinema verite vibe of the film, and the
very present.
Let's say the structure, the restrictions that the kind of story he's telling places on it. You're not going to go chase down the woman. It's going to be, because it's so about his experience, Rahim's experience. We don't get to know those things. Maybe it's discovered later, but we're not. That's not the documentary we're watching. We're a little bird in rooms that Rahim's in, and Rahim has got so much coming down on him. In part author to a degree of his own misfortune, but so much coming down on him. He ain't chasing what. Took me 3 days, and I don't have 150 million towmen debt crushing me, and only 2 days out of jail before I have to go back for who knows how the hell long, right? Even what was motivating the daughter, Nazanin, thank you. What was motivating her? Why did she take the video? Why, partly he's fighting with her dad, I guess. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm answering my own question.
Well, but, and she's also got her father's chops in terms of, lining things up and protecting themselves, I think. And she's learned a few lessons from him already, even though she's, seems to be a young woman, but
Well, you pick up your values in the home.
Exactly.
Your personality is driven by the non-shared environment, i.e. your friends, but your values are the stuff that's taught at home.
I mean, not knowing a lot about Iranian cinema, I felt that there's probably things that, like anytime you watch anything foreign, there's probably things we're missing. I mean, we get the gist of the story and that sort of thing, but there's subtleties I think we may miss. So part of that is just sort of feeling, sort of feeling that out for the first little chunk of the movie, and then just sort of enjoying the ride, to the end,
For lack of a better word.
yeah, or at
Yeah.
least taking it in. But yeah, and it's an interesting point about religion because for I don't know, there's many times that they
Yeah, I don't
pray
even
per
think
day.
I don't think we heard a call to prayer.
There was no calls to prayer, no
Yeah.
reference to it, nothing. And there was a lot of meal times, but that's sort of, he's got leave, so there was sort of breaks in time that we were aware of. You
Yeah.
only have 2 days, so got to go back for 3 years, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's kind of amazing that they skipped over it, and obviously a conscious choice in retrospect.
The only thing I'll add to what you're saying, Jim, and what I've already said, both in craft, actually, no, I'm going to save this because I think it was both I'm just going to make a reference to it saying, so well shot from Rahim's perspective. Great way to end the story, but also with so much meaning going on, is the final shot.
Yeah, just
final shot. Somebody getting out.
inside.
He's waiting
Yeah.
out. I just chef's kiss on that one. But I want to get into it more in the meaning, and I'll talk about the craft and the story of it as well. But
sure,
wanna
I just
mention it.
and then just that one
Mr.
point, I
Joyko?
suspect there's there were. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Am I
Yep, you're
frozen?
back. Jim's back.
It seems there's a couple times where Rahim started fighting physically with people, but aside from that, it seemed to be a very I don't know if it's passive aggressive, but it's very a very mannered society. So the man leaving jail is like, oh, here's some candies. He says, oh, no thank you, no thank you, and he says, oh, pass them out to your cellmates. He takes it anyway. I mean, there's a lot sort of being kept in right there. But
you know what? I'm going to push back a little there, Jim. What I loved about the fact that there's fighting, but it's not Hollywood.
Yeah, no.
It's scrapping and it's all kind of sad and pathetic, was something that and which again fits the realism of the piece. It's not because even we could put this story in Canada and it could be shot. Everything could be the same, except maybe gold and debtors' prisons. But do you know what I mean? Like most of the time, fights are sad, kind of pathetic, ridiculous, lame affairs. It's not the fantasy that hockey presents us or Hollywood film presents us, or pretty much all television presents us with. It's pretty squalid, and most people, the vast majority, are not violent people. Even if they're criminals, they're not violent criminals. This just, sad sackery and I don't know, committing the crime of what? And even that, we don't quite get the straight answer, which I think is so human and realistic.
About why his business
what
went
the
under?
Germans would call committing the crime of finding, stealing by finding. And that actually, I'm not sure if it's nationwide in Germany, but there are at least some of the federated states where that is against the law. You could be charged with a crime by finding something and keeping it. In Germany, judges find for the weepers, not the finders, not the keepers. Keepers do not win in Germany. But here's where it comes back to you, Jim. You were telling me about an anecdote when you were editing the Writers Guild magazine. And somebody you had purchased a piece off a crime writer, and how the crime writer was saying, yeah, most real crime is squalid.
Yeah.
It's not a great mystery. It's not a...
Nope.
And even this one, in how the lying works. And I guess I'm now moving into meaning. So
Sure.
cool with you if we just keep sliding in that direction.
Absolutely.
All right. And I think that's part of like one of the theme. Well, maybe not a theme, but yeah, kind of a theme. An unstated theme, subtle theme of the film is that do we ever really quite know? Because we don't really quite, like you said, we don't know about the woman who has the description of the bag.
Mhm.
We never really, where did she disappear to? What happened there? Why did she suddenly have to get away? Who knows, right? We don't know about, we don't really, okay, so did, bear with me, my friend. It's also one of my favorite, like one of the people I'm like, boy, I want to know more. Farkhande, played by his girlfriend,
fiance,
by Sahar Goldoost. She, well, did she find it? Did she, like, we don't really actually know about the bag, how she came in possession of the bag.
Yeah, the handle snapped.
Or was it? Yeah, like is it? We don't know. No, and I really enjoyed that, and I think that's one of the. In choosing to make the movie this way, it's in a way part of his kind of a thesis is, do we ever really know?
Yeah.
Do we know? No. I also wonder about, and now I can go to the last scene. So for folks, if you haven't seen it, well, we're in the spoiler zone. Suck it up, Buttercup. But the last scene is a great moment. It reminds me of Miss Sloane. But it's a great moment. He goes back to jail. He's gives his son a hug. Doesn't actually get a hug from his girlfriend, and they may not see each other ever, right? But she does kiss the boy, and as he's sitting waiting to be processed, what's your name? All right, and then, but there's a guy who's getting out, and he's an older man. And he leaves, and there's the candies and everything. But I think it's just seeing that from his perspective. And only a couple of times does the camera go on Rahim. But mostly it's just this moment where the guy goes out, and there's his wife, and they're older, and they're going to get on the bus because he's now free. Hence the congratulations, because he's getting out. And I just found that such a great moment, such a great way to end the film on this pathos. I believe it's the right word for that moment. This kind of it's not poignant. It's actually, we don't know how it's going to play out.
Yeah,
all we know. It doesn't sound like we're in a film world where Farkhande she'll just stay loyal, He has not, because of all the choices he's made to this point, and I'll get into the politics of the piece in a second, but because of all the choices he's made to this point, Jim, I in some ways it's like, this is not, he will do the maximum amount of time. I guess, it doesn't sound like Iran has one of the few benefits of capitalism, even though they keep trying to get rid of it for us peasants, but is the idea of bankruptcy and of cleaning the slate, that's, but so you don't even feel like that's going to happen for him. He's such a sad sack. He's not motivated, so he's smiling, and as part of it, it's like, well, this is my life. I'll just go back to jail. Kind of happy, relieved that he doesn't have to worry about dealing with the outside world again. I don't know, but it's heartbreaking in a way, because it's almost like he's watching the scene and he's like, he's not really participating in it, in a way trying not to participate in it.
Yeah.
But he's watching the scene of this old couple reunited. And instead of, like, there's a part of me going, that's you, Rahim, if Farhadi defies her family. No one count on that one. Gotta kind of wonder what Farhadi saw in you at all.
Yeah.
But, you know, anyway, I mean, there was that. And then, of course, I do think there is, it's not just a comment on debt and, you know, the nastiness of people who are like, no, I'm gonna own you through this debt forever. I will not make any movement, because in a way I draw more satisfaction from screwing you, controlling you through this debt than I ever would if I got paid. Like, there's a part of me thinking he wouldn't drop that miserable PRICK wouldn't drop it even if he got fully paid. Like, you think of all his behavior, and how it was all about, you know, he says it's all a lie and blah, 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 blah. But there's like points where it's like, no, you could get something now, take a haircut, let the guy out, take a haircut and move on with your life. He is unwilling to do that. They're unwilling. So they want to, as much as they say they hate the guy, never want to see him, every choice they make, that family, is to bind him to them. And I think he's criticizing that. You're gonna jump on that, Jim?
Well, yeah, no, just and the fellow the guy he owes is his former brother-in-law as well, and there's obviously Bahram, and there's obviously bad blood there.
The sister, ex-wife.
They were family. And Bahram's daughter, who filmed their fight, would have been his niece through marriage, right? And so there's some bad blood there too, and you have to sort of wonder what that history entails. But of course, you know, because the movie's so devoted to the now, is that they don't go there, which is fine. You know, it sort of adds some mystery to it. It for me, I early on in my notes, I put the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I sort of thought that's part of. I mean, it's an old cliche, but that's part of it. And also, there's the sort of the role of society and the role of social media. And it's interesting that they use social media as a way to move the plot forward, but at no time, I think, they didn't really show too many screens. Like the default thing in a lot of movies these days is to show the action that they're looking at on the phones, and they might have shown a couple shots, but I don't think they really did.
That's
just
not
sort of,
where the camera is.
And it just sort of exists.
Yeah.
You know, it's just one of these things that social media exists all around us.
Yeah.
But they don't sort of show specifically, you know, what's going on. But,
and that's a perfect opportunity for me to talk about that, which is, I think, another theme of the film.
I planned it like
but
that.
You did. Although I agree with you. I think us not seeing the screen is much like we don't see the screen. We're only seeing the screen when we're looking at it, but all this stuff is happening. The camera is out here because it's it's not a documentary, but it's cinema verite. You don't have insert shots, you know?
Yeah.
Even when you do, like, they try and hide that it's an insert, it's a cutaway, you know? I think that's something we hardly ever saw, were inserts and cutaways. Like, it may be in a scene change, like I'm thinking when the gold coins are getting counted out and weighed, but that was a scene change. We're in the gold shop, in the appraiser's shop, and then the camera moves up and away. It doesn't cut to, you know, or if it's a cut to, it was a great cut that we didn't notice. But as far as the social media meaning of the piece, it's one area where we all natively understand. We see a story, whether it's, and it's weird because I think both are acting in this film. We see a story that, on the one hand, people are good, and we will run with it, not asking one critical question because we don't want to actually scrape away at it and find out maybe this isn't the feel-good story I thought it was. And social media is just rotten with that shit, of no attribution, just this puppy was this and this, and, give a like, to support puppies or some bullshit. At the same time, it's also, and we see it here in the rise and the fall of Rahim via social media, via the ubiquitous cameras everywhere. What do you need a surveillance state? We're too busy spying on each other. But in his fall, because we also paradoxically love seeing someone behave. Also in the way we think everyone is. People are terrible. And we love to see those, even though if you think about the story we're actually being shown, it's more messy and human, and at times squalid, and even at times like, at the end of the first act, all these two lovers, they want to be done with it, especially Rahim, because he's like, I don't want to have to face my sister. I'd rather go back to jail than have her look at me like, I don't want to hear any more shit about swearing on my mother's grave. But to be free of it, which is really what he wants to be. He wants to be free of debt, and he doesn't want that debt to just replace the old debt. And so it's like, let's just, I even like the moment they do. Prayer is referred to and God is referred to, and he's, when she's like, all that praying, I thought, and he's like, wow, if God really wanted to help us out, giving us all the money, he didn't.
Yeah, that's right too. Yeah.
And so I do think there is, of course, that theme of debt and how debt binds, and how, like how corrosive that can be to all the players. Because even the debt of the ex-wife, that's resentment, that's debt from a bad relationship. So that's part of what's going on here. The social media aspect of it, that's going on here. That's part of its politics, A brief comment on the Sadr, which, if I can separate briefly, it's like, it was weird moment at the very beginning of the movie when he goes to pick up his girlfriend, and she comes out in a Sadr to hide the bag she has, not her usual MO. She's not a Sadr wearer. And how, but I gotta admit, it's like, geez, that thing flowed like nobody's business. And all I could think of briefly took me totally out of the movie, Jim. And all I could think is that just the way a good Sadr will operate, where it looks like it's forever flowing over the sands of the desert? Because it was almost bizarre in how flowing, and it's like, again, and you gotta, I'm not, I guess I am praising this Sadr, but I'm not praising the practice. I don't know what the hell I'm
Wait
doing.
a minute, I'm watching Dune. Some 20 foot of train. 20 feet of
it's
train.
just crazy,
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. Well,
Anyways,
he even commented on it. He's sitting and he does that talking to himself. He goes, "Oh, there she is. Oh, check out that Sadr."
Yeah. Well, and he's teasing her about it, and she's like, "Oh, am I gonna hide this? Maybe not stolen, but maybe not totally legitly acquired bag and the gold in it, and the
Yeah. It really was very un-Western in that, or it felt like a piece from a different time in that you had to hide things like, oh, that's not her usual bag, and that people would notice. I mean, that's that kind of, I think part of the meaning too was just the quality of the, or just the,
Well,
I
this
guess the
is
suspicion that
yeah.
exists in that society, and maybe even things like, he admitted freely to thinking whether or not he would keep the money. And I was thinking, is that a crime in itself? If you have doubts about not returning it immediately, does that make you a bad guy
Well,
as
it
well?
does in Germany, though. I brought that
Yeah,
up on purpose.
yeah.
There are societies that go, yeah, no, you don't. That's not yours.
Yeah.
But in Germany, in the West, has some states have the
Mhm.
theft by keeping. So it is. I think even here in North America, although we don't have those laws, we do. There's something kind of, you find a wallet, and that's the whole idea of being tempted by finding a wallet. Not, no one goes, oh, no one goes, I found a wallet today at $100. I won the lottery. Like, no one says that. It's almost
Yeah.
always couched in moral terms, like whether we see it in pop culture or somebody tells you about it, it's like, well, it didn't have, you hear some horse shit about it didn't have any ID, or, I only took out the money as a reward, or whatever, right? I do think that's I suspect there's it's not necessarily as cultural as we might think it is, just because we're seeing this thing operating in a different culture. I would more, now this is my own bias, and this is where I think the film can be like a political Rorschach test. The way I saw the having to hide the bag is like, these people it is Iran. It's economically under this huge amount of pressure because I'm going to say American economic intransigence, unwilling to do any kind of deal with Iran. So not that that's what the movie's talking about, but it is. It's even these people that are ostensibly middle class. They have to hide these things because everyone will go, when did you become so rich that you have two bags?
Yeah.
Where's
Yeah,
that other
exactly.
bag from? That seems like a nice bag. Like, what's going on? It's more just your neighbors noticing it's different because who the fuck gets new stuff?
Yeah.
Where do you where did that new thing come from?
No, it's a byproduct, I guess,
yeah.
of the whole
poverty.
Yeah.
I mean, like why do and also like in a lot of even in North America, the poorer you are, the more you're expected to share with your social support network because you depend on them more. So all of a sudden, some of that also is she wants to give this money to her boyfriend. Maybe she would be under more pressure to share with her family, share with neighbors. There wouldn't be the 75 million toman she was hoping for. Which it took me forever to figure out how much, and all I could think of is, God damn it, I'm like Jim trying to figure out the weight of gold. Folks,
and how much? What was that? The Five Bloods.
The Five Bloods, yes. I figured his total debt, which was in the film is estimated about 150 million toman, is about 45 grand in Canadian dollars, based on a 10-to-1 real to toman ratio. Although until they went through, relatively speaking, recent
Correction?
redenomination, where they knocked off several zeros. The real to toman ratio was 10,000 to 1. But that would have meant like he had, this sad sack had somehow borrowed $45 million from some loan sharks. And I'm like, that idiot?
Yeah.
I'm kind of shocked anyone would give him 45,000.
Yeah.
Although, who knows, some of that, because it came from loan sharks, some might be the VIG and,
Yeah.
But anyway, I think all these things are kind of in there. And to finish it off, Jim, from my perspective, this is where I think it depends on what class you're from, on how you interpret even the character. And I'm not sure if that was intended or it just is a byproduct of making such a film. You'd have to ask the director for that. Maybe we should ask the director. But the woman, so Breakfast All Day, that's where I got the reference from. And why I was, we should watch it. But the way the critic, she interpreted it was, as you discover more and more about this guy isn't the good guy you think he is. And, and yeah, he's not a good man, but I don't think he's a bad man either. I see context as driving him as much as his own, albeit poor choices, but, I'm not sure I'd choose any different. If I ended up in debtor's prison, hey, you're going to get, maybe he wasn't a sad sack before, but he came a sad sack later, divorce, debtor's prison, loan sharks,
Having a good run.
How much
things are coming up, all Rahim.
How much get up and go? How much entrepreneurial spirit are you going to have in that scenario? So
reminds me of that Jack Lemmon-like character on The Simpsons, Gil, that they brought in. Oh, things are looking good for Gil. That sort of that poor salesman, middle-aged salesman type. But yeah, no, it certainly is different.
I have no hate for puppies, by the way.
I was just kidding. Yeah.
Anyway, continue. Sorry, Jim.
I was just going to say too, just about I think a lot of this hinges on his character. You think, well, if he had, a lot of this movie is told through various looks. If you can sort of, Rahim will say something, and his brother not roll his eyes, but he'll just go, wait, what? Or even his son. There was a couple of reaction shots of his son going, Dad, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so, and so he's, in various descriptions of the film, it refers to his naivete. But I sort of think that and this isn't a big deal, it's a movie poster, but the movie, if you take a look again at the main poster, which is just his face, and he looks like a formidable guy. I'm like, well, what's going on here? And then when you get to the movie, he's just kind of like, well, I don't know. I guess I screwed up. You don't get quite that steely look from the right here, the movie poster. Wait, am I doing that? That way? Yeah.
Not that way,
that you do from
you had
the
it
actual.
Right once.
Yes, there we go. That you do from the actual movie, but that's a whole other thing. Whole kettle of fish.
There we go. That direction. But I think that's half the reason. He's half in shadow, or not in shadow, but covered. Right? Is and even that obscured view that we're all. That we're all getting, we're not seeing everything. We're not being told everything, which is so real life. I mean, whether purposefully and unpurposefully, we edit our stories, what'd you do today? And, maybe you skip one part and you zip up the other, and all of a sudden you've got a nice little story you've told that may have very little to do with the facts of the matter.
Yeah.
But you look better. And it's a lot more interesting for everyone else. Back to the social media commentary, I think, in this film. It's like, we love it because it gives us somebody to root for or somebody to sneer at. We want to be throwing tomatoes or laurels. Can you throw a laurel? I suppose.
Sure. And then there's the whole neighborhood thing, like, oh, you made our neighborhood look good. Thank you, Rahim.
Yeah. Until you didn't.
Just like,
Until the truth comes out. Rahim
Yeah.
sucks.
exactly.
And I think that's part of it is we get bound up in this stuff, and that maybe part of is I'm not 100% sure he's necessarily having like a real the director's necessarily going people like there's not a it's not a what I think DMG in the house would say is it's not so much a message, but it is a theme here, you know. Yeah, it is, and I do like I drew the similarity earlier to Nomadland, but I think this is where Chloe Zhao and Mr. Farhadi differ. Is he really does? I think he's got a class perspective. You know, he's choosing these people and he's focusing on the economics of their lives. You know, and making clear. And it doesn't have to be some Marxist analysis, and there's the evil boss man, and you know I think it's a little more Dostoevsky and less even Dickens, you know, but still that you know really understanding people's economic contexts and how they can be trapped, and he's certainly at no time does the lender look good? You know, at no time are we ever. We may think Rahim's a schmuck, but we never go, oh, pity the poor jailer. You know,
exactly.
If only the jailer, if only that system worked. You know.
Yeah.
No one's saying that. No one's going. But geez, how is he going to pay that money back? We're all going, that money's never getting paid back.
Nope.
Just at one point, sooner or later, you got to accept it so that you don't keep the guy in jail, you know, because what use is that to society there, you know?
Yeah. No, it's about keeping under the radar is a good policy when you're in Rahim's position, and I think he missed out on that lesson. And suffered the consequences.
Well,
but it's like to me, it's like It's a Wonderful Life without the happy ending. You know, it's just that kind of piling and piling and piling on, and you know the ending is pretty subtle. Like he's not sort of gnashing his teeth and shaking his fist at God or anything. He's just like, oh well, back to prison. You know, and he goes back, and things aren't looking rosy for him. And you know, his son needs a father, and his girlfriend is sort of in the wind, and you know, it doesn't look good for Rahim. But
maybe actually, Jim, thinking about a couple of things you just said there, maybe part of the reason he's smiling is everything is cleared. There's no more lying.
Yeah.
He's even at his, you know what? Eventually he will be set free.
Yeah.
Will he have
been pulled off?
You know, yeah. Like, and he's free of the lying. He's free of all the lies, you know, which, you know, again, he did not seem to be a fan of. Again, yeah, because you're just trading one debtor for another. You know, you always, but you're still owing. And yeah, so he decided, you know, like Raskolnikov, except that he's not looking at the blood on his shoe, you know, after he's done the deed, kind of going, oh, we're free. You know, because I think that's another theme, to be free is, and so maybe he is, it's like, okay, I've lost my girlfriend. It's going to be years before I see my son. But I will get out eventually, and maybe I'll be able to have a relationship with my son. And, you know, who knows? Maybe Farhadi will, you know, stick around. Maybe she will be there. You know, it's hard to say. Again, like just what a great ending. What a great ambiguous ending. You know, there's something being said there, but not so much that you're going, oh, like, yeah, Farhadi isn't trying to give us a fairy tale or
No.
a happy ending. But at the same time, it still allows us to hold out a little hope for the guy.
Yeah, he's still
Or maybe
drawing
I've
breath,
talked
so
myself into hope for him.
that's
But going back
That's a
to
painting
So
to do
Breakfast
tomorrow,
All Day, you know what? They're very much, and that's such a middle class, upper middle class worldview. It's like he's not as good a guy, and it's that, you know, got to distress these poor people. I don't think that's what the woman actually thinks.
No.
But there
No.
is that sort of, you know, you're focusing, instead of seeing the context under it, Rahim operates in, it's just seeing exclusively his choices. When I think the filmmaker, by spending so much time in the environment, we are supposed to understand his context. You know, the criticism I had of Nomadland, it's like, wow, it's like you're consciously ignoring the context. We see it, but it's not even being discussed. You know, you're cutting off that conversation. Where here, at least, it's all about the debt, you know, and about family members even saying, you know, come on, give the guy a break. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what about you, Jim? What did you think?
Well, I mean, in terms of the end, like I said,
holy shit, have we gone long?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah, we gotta.
I mean, just to wrap it up,
we gotta wrap this
it's
up.
Obviously,
we got
not
other stuff. We're an hour and a half on this flick.
So it's the default thing, you know, the great American movie, unless it's something like Don't Look Up, is that there's hope at the end, and this is not that as much. I mean, there might be a flicker there, but you know, it's not the same. Nobody sort of you know, rescues him from his plight, and you know, I think that's another thing that you get when you watch something from a different place, is that you get different choices and different ways of doing things, which is always you know, it's always a nice thing to experience. Nice. It's always
good.
I appreciate it. I appreciate seeing something from a different point of view. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay, we are going to have to rush through a few of these things.
Sure.
Really sorry about that, everyone. Jim, I am going to throw it over to you. And why don't you tell us about the next, what's the next movie we're looking at?
That is February 20th. So the next one is the Winnipeg shot Nobody with Bob Odenkirk.
That's right, everybody. With a low budget bus fight that, you know, doesn't give Shang-Chi a run for its money, but holds its own.
The last film that I saw, or the last concert I saw before COVID, was Morrissey. And it was a Monday night in October of 2019. And they cleared the streets. They said all the bus routes have changed because they're doing a movie shoot. So you might want to avoid Main Street and whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever streets around the concert hall. But they were shooting some of the night action that night. So kind of cool.
Yeah. So folks, you can find it on, if you're a Crave subscriber, part of their HBO total movie package, or of course you can rent it on Google Play Movies, wherever you like to rent your digital downloads. But yeah, for Winnipeggers out there, you will recognize a lot of Winnipeg, and I think it did it very well. You can recognize Winnipeg and a certain flavor of Winnipeg, while it's still being, you know, set somewhere in Chicago or around, you know, in a Detroit, a Michigan or Illinois suburb or something. So next, Jim, we've got, are we giving the director a pass or a fail?
This guy doesn't know what he's doing. No, give him a pass. I mean, if
Chump,
you like,
who's
you
this
like
Chump?
Slow burn cinema verite, absolutely, give him a pass.
Yeah, ditto. Couldn't agree more. All right. Final thought.
Final thoughts. It's a little
I need another overlay when we're this light. It's like final thought. period.
This guy, I don't know, because I know you've watched Superstore, but the main character, Rahim, reminded me a lot of Amy's dopey husband, who always had these business ideas that always fell through, like
Yeah.
a travel agency and, doing his barbecue videos in
Always
real
a
time
scheme.
on YouTube. He goes, I don't like those ones where they cook it and then they show you to it later. I like just sitting there for 3 hours and staring at the
Watching
screen
steak.
real time. Anyway, that's my final thought.
Yeah. For myself, I kind of like the comparison you're using, Jim. Yeah, Farhadi is definitely not Frank Capra.
Yeah.
And in a way, this is almost like an antidote to It's a Wonderful Life. He's getting dumped on, but in part, like, what's his name in, what the hell is his name?
George Bailey.
Thank you. George Bailey is an exemplar, a virtuous man who, in the end, because the world works for virtuous men, that movie is based on the fair world, the just world type fallacy.
Yep.
And I think this one is based on the real world hypothesis, let's say.
Yep.
And how humans actually behave. We're not saints, we're not sinners. Our context does matter. Both our moral context, our families, all that other stuff. So, but yeah, I love that comparison, Jim. That's very, that's a great one. All right, everybody. Yeah, I think that's it for us. Want to thank everyone in the chat, and let's talk about those people. Let us praise them all. Apparently I don't. Oh, Richard L. Didn't see the flick, but freedom of a sort through facing the truth, even if he has to go to prison, would be very much in line with Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. Yeah, that's yes, Richard L. I'm really kind of excited about that comparison. Actually, it'd be interesting. Oh, we got another Russian bot.
This is awesome.
Another Russian bot.
Don't they have enough on their hands, on their plate right now?
You'd think. Well, maybe it's the Cheboyko and Jim Cheboyko
Yeah.
and Rob Christensen.
I go to hassle these guys.
Exactly. Anyway, yeah, let's Richard L. and Katie Fowler. Thank you both for hanging out. Katie, I'm sure you're out there lurking. Thanks very much. Who else do we got? We got Dragon Movie Guy, DMG in the house. Thank you very much.
Hey, Brian.
Thanks for hanging with us. Ahmed, Jelly Duck 100.
Woohoo.
Jelly Duck!
Jelly Duck.
Thanks, man, for hanging with us. And yes, our whole team, a couple of Russian bots, and then I think a Portuguese bot, but it could also be a Filipino bot. I'm not 100% sure on the last name. But anyway, we've got a few bots in the house as well. As long as they contribute a little bit to watch time, I'm good with that.
This place has everything. Russian bots, Filipino, or Portuguese AI.
Anyway, so
movie
with that,
posters.
Thank you all very much for coming. Again, next Sunday, so the 20th, 9:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. I promise you we won't go as long as we did on this one. Yeah, we've actually, Jim, we've been pretty consistent on sticking to an hour. This is a little bit of an outlier for us now, but I think the conversation was worth it. Hope you guys agree. Yeah, so see you on February 20th, 9:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. Universal Coordinated Time -6. All right.